You can trade your money or your time. That's the universal and most basic trade that pretty much everybody has. People like to think that there's like something more, that there's a way that they can get around this, but Full Metal Alchemist is an anime TV show, kind of puts this really well. In the show, there's the idea of what they call the law of equivalent exchange. It's a show that's all kind of based around like alchemy and the characters are able to kind of like pull up rocks and create structures and shoot fire and all sorts of things and stuff, but all the magic is based on alchemy, a trade. Law of equivalent exchange, which is for them is for something to be gained, something of equal measure needs to be lost. It's maybe not those words exactly, but it's close enough. And in the real world, it's trading money versus trading time. And at the beginning, a lot of people don't have the money to trade and feel like, they don't have, an option to like invest or whatever it might be. But it is really just comes down to the fundamentals of trading money or time. Most people are going to have to trade the time. The problem is a lot of people don't kind of really realize that or try and convince themselves and work around the fact that this exists. And it does exist, and it's very real. And you always need to kind of make that choice at some point. Am I going to invest more money in this, or am I going to invest more time? Now, as people build up wealth and kind of get richer, they can make the trade either way. They can spend the time because they've got less indentured time to do other things, or they can spend the money because they just have money to spare. But trying to act in a way where you're sort of like avoiding this kind of fundamental truth goes against the nature and the reality that we live in. So Full Metal Alchemist kind of hit the nail on the head with it, that it is your equal value has to be traded, Now, one problem in this sort of like, a trade-off and balance is that, time is not, money fluctuates in terms of like value, especially in, fiat currency. The value of the pound and the dollar, wherever stuff, fluctuates on the markets, so how much your money will buy will diminish over time. Pretty much, that's a constant like truth, unfortunately, about like currency we have now, is that it will be worth less over time. But time has that say, it's not as pronounced as the trade-off, the equal value of time. 1 hour spent like now is not the same as an hour spent in the future or in the past. Time in equal measure in different parts of life is not equal. If I sort of like kind of get rich in my 20s and have all my 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, to spare and live freely and stuff, that is a great advantage. But if I live humbly all the way up to age like 50, 60 and retire, and then I kind of have like the wealth to avoid indentured time, well, like, the 10, 20, 30 years I might have at the end of that is not the same as if, I got it in my 20s or 30s. Same as if you go through any major life event. So, if you become, a father or a mother, or a brother or sister or a grandparent, time in those periods is not the same as time spent in other periods of your life. So that trade between, okay, just calculating things up, so saying like, okay, my time each day is worth X amount of money, and I'm going to trade a whole day of my time working on something, it's going to be worth X amount. It's true and not true because it fluctuates between what stage of life you're in. It's better to embrace the nature and the reality of the universal trade, the basic trade that everybody has to make it in life in some way, which is you trade money or time. And you can trade both together. You can trade both together and get a magnifier of things. If you spend both time and money, you can amplify things. But always be aware of that universal trade, and they're never really that equal. Law of equivalent exchange. And I highly recommend watching Full Metal Alchemist, even if you're not an anime fan. It's a great show with some great messaging and some great ideas. Thanks for watching.